Good everyone. My name is Dr. Jacob Adeaju from the Department of Educational Management, University of Lagos. I am here.
Once again, I want to say good evening to everyone, and you are welcome to EDU 719 class. The title of this course is Teaching, Introduction to Teaching as a Profession. This is the LMS portal of University of Lagos, Nigeria. Today, we shall be discussing further from where we stop. But before we go into today's business, I want us to have a brief revision of what we did last. Last week, we looked at that question: who is a teacher? That was the question we considered last week. Who is a teacher? And you will remember that initially we said everybody is a teacher. We mentioned parents, we mentioned religious leader, we mentioned the youth, we even mentioned experience and history, that all those are teachers. But we now moved further to be specific by adding school to the meaning of teacher. And we said a school teacher or a professional teacher. And by that, we were able to see teaching from a professional angle. You will recall I define a professional teacher as someone who has been trained in a teacher's training institution and certified by the appropriate regulatory authorities to teach a particular subject in an educational institution, thereby impacting in the students' knowledge, skills, and competencies, as well as inculcating in them appropriate values and attitudes that will help them to live and contribute to the development of their society. We underline some phrases there, phrases like teacher training institution, regulatory authority, educational institution. So those were the phrases we underline. And we look at teaching from those point of view, that before somebody can call himself a teacher, that person must have acquired training in an educational institution. We also look at the characteristic of a good teacher. We mentioned a number of them, you will remember. We talk about good pedagogical skill, qualities of a good teacher. We mentioned a number of them. We talk about good pedagogical skill, and we talk about the classroom management skill as well as content related skill. We also talk about good communication skills, and we look at that from two angles, and from the angle of talking to the students and also listening to the students. We also talk about enthusiasm, that is showing of strong excitement about what we are teaching. We talk about the need for us to avoid mannerism in order for us not to irritate the students and for them not to give us name that will provoke us also. The fourth point we mentioned was emotional stability. And we mentioned that the teacher must be able to control himself. He must equally be able to tolerate the excesses of the student without giving room for unruly behavior. We also talk about being organized and being clear in your delivery. So those were the qualities we mentioned last week. So what are we going to do today? Part of the phrases we underline in the definition is teacher training institution. That is, someone who has been trained in a teacher training institution. Today, we want to see a number of such institutions in Nigeria today. So, when we talk of teacher training institution, why is the training even important? The National Policy on Education, especially the 6th edition, states in section 94 that all teachers in the educational institution shall be professionally trained. That's a big one. The policy further states in section 100 bracket B that only professionally qualified and registered teacher shall be allowed to practice at all levels. That shows that as a matter of policy, the government may just wake up one day and decide to implement that policy. Today, the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria has been given the mandate to register teacher in Nigeria. Why the Teacher Registration Council of Nigeria is the only one that has that mandate? Many institutions have the mandate of training teachers. So we are talking of two things here now. We are talking of training of teachers on one side, and we are talking of registering them on the other side. So that shows that even when the teacher has acquired all the skills that are needed to practice in the classroom as a professional, it does not end there. So what we are saying is that even after this, your program, that is not the end of the road. Registration is the other part. But first of all, let us take the training aspect before we now talk of the registration. Yes, the training aspect can take place in any of the teachers training institutions we have in Nigeria. And we are going to start with the National Teachers Institute. National Teachers Institute. National Teachers Institute was established by Act number 7 of 1978. Act number 7 of 1978. That was the act that established the National Teachers Institute. And this institute has been given the mandate to provide courses of instruction that will lead to the development, upgrading, and certification of teachers in Nigeria. You will recall before the teacher colleges in Nigeria had the mandate of training teachers on level TC2, grade level 2. I will call them grade 2 teachers. But after some time, there was a review of that policy that made NCE the minimum teaching qualification in Nigeria. But what happens to those who did not have that minimum qualification and who also may not have the opportunity of going back to regular schools to acquire or to upgrade their knowledge? It was on that premise that NTI was established. NTI has its headquarters in Kaduna, and they run a number of programs. Those programs are like remedial programs, and like I've told you, while some of them have terminated, we still have some that are running currently. But what are the programs the institute has mandate to run? The institute has mandate to run NCE program. And the full meaning of NCE is Nigeria Certificate in Education. Please, it is not National Certificate in Education. It is a common error for you to hear people talk about National Certificate in Education. No, it is not. It is Nigeria Certificate in Education. That is the full meaning of NCE. After today, I don't expect you to make that mistake again. So it is Nigeria Certificate in Education. They also run programs like your own, parallel to your own, that is postgraduate diploma in education. They also have the mandate to run such program. They run degree program too, and there's another program they run, advanced diploma in education. They also run the Pathfinder Teachers Training Program. You will recall that the teachers' colleges no longer exist. But some time ago, there was an agitation that program should be brought back. But government said no. Instead of them to bring it back, they gave the NTI mandate to add that to the program they run. And some states, I think about 20 now, key into that program and they run it, mainly states from the northern parts of Nigeria. Also, the NTI also has a mandate to organize what we call continuing professional development for teachers. So these are the programs they run. And I've told you, they no longer produce the grade 2 teachers. And grade 2 certificate is no longer relevant in Nigeria of today. So before anybody can call himself a qualified teacher, he must have that minimum qualification, which is the Nigeria Certificate in Education. So in exam, I may put this question forward. What is the minimum teaching qualification in Nigeria today? I will put National Certificate in Education. I will put National Diploma in Education. I will put Postgraduate Diploma in Education. And I will put Nigeria Certificate in Education. I am very, very sure, without any doubt in my mind, that nobody will miss that question. So that is that about the NTI as the first teacher training institution in Nigeria. We move to the second one. The second one is the colleges of education. The colleges of education. The colleges of education also has the mandate of producing teachers that will graduate with NCE certificates. We have the college in almost all the states in Nigeria. As we have the private, we also have the public. At the end of the 3-year stay, the graduates will be awarded a certificate that is called NCE. So that is the minimum teaching qualification in Nigeria, as I've said before. Another institution that also trains teachers is Nigeria Army School of Education. Nigeria Army School of Education. The Nigeria Army School of Education, which we call NASE, is under the control of the military in Nigeria. You know, the military, they also have schools. And their school must also be equipped with personnel. And those personnel must be professional. Although they also accommodate students from outside, but the control of that institution is purely on the hand of the military. Then we have the universities of education. These are specialized universities that are also given the mandate to produce teachers, this time around at degree level. Universities of education run both undergraduate and postgraduate programs in Nigeria. An example of University of Education in Nigeria is Taiso Lare University of Education that is located in Ijebu-Ode. Then we have Institute of Education in the universities. It is not all universities that have institutes of education, but in the University of Lagos, we have it here, and we call it Institute of Continuing Education. University of Ilorin has it, Obafemi Awolowo University has it, University of Ibadan has it, University of Benin has it, and a few number of universities in Nigeria. They run degree programs as well as postgraduate programs. It is under the control of the respective university. We also have the faculties of education in the universities. The faculties of education in the universities, like your university now, University of Lagos, we have the faculty of education there, and that is the faculty I belong. And that faculty too has the mandate to train both undergraduate and postgraduate teachers. Then we have schools or Department of Education in the polytechnics. You will say polytechnic is supposed to be in charge of vocational education, vocational programs only. Yes, but we have a few number of them that also run uh, education programs. They run education programs in their school. An example is Yabatech. Yabatech run education program, and they train teacher under their first degree program. Although it must have a affiliation with some university or a university. So all these institutions put together are referred to as teacher training institutions. Until someone has been to any of them, before that person can be called a professional or qualified teacher. So if you have not been to any of these institutions, there's no way you can acquire the trainings that are needed for a professional teacher. So now, by that first qualification, we can now say you are in the process of becoming a professional or becoming professional teachers, because University of Lagos, the Faculty of Education that is running your program, is a certified university, certified institution that is recognized in the training of teachers in Nigeria. So that is that about the institution. That is that about the training. Now we want to go into registration now. You know, I've told you that even if someone has acquired the training and he is not registered by that agency, TRCN, that person is still not regarded as a professional teacher. So we are finished with the training. Now we want to go into the registration. Like I've told you before, the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria was established by TRCN decree. Now we call it Act, Decree 31 of 1993. That was during the military era. But although that decree was promulgated in 1993, there was no serious activities until year 2000. It was in year 2000 that the first and the pioneer registrar of that agency was appointed. What made the government to look into this direction of creating an agency that will be in charge of registration of teachers. It was as a result of agitation from various stakeholders in education. And those stakeholders, they query why teaching would not be professionalized, like those in medicine, like engineering, like those in law. They also worried that if the those in medical practice should have the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria, those in engineering should have the current, and those in law should have the Legal Education Council. Why won't those in education also have an agency that will be in charge of their registration? And that is one aspect of professionalism, as we are going to discuss in our lecture today. If a profession has no agency in charge of its registration and control, you don't regard this as a profession. So, teaching, from that point, the process of professionalization of teaching began. And that shows that after acquiring the training by an individual, it will not stop there. It has not ended there. That person must still go further to register with the agency. So now we want to see the mandates of that agency. And I call that functions of TRCN. Functions of TRCN. Yes, what are the functions as entrenched in the act that established them? The first function, a mandate that was given to this agency, is registration and licensing of qualified teacher. How would they do that? The first thing is to categorize teachers into grades. That is, we want to group teachers into grade, and we have grades A to D. By qualification, one can easily know where he belongs. Now, let us look at the requirement for each of these grades. A grade A teacher is someone who has a PhD in education, or someone who has a PhD in another discipline with PGDE or NCE. What have I said? I said a grade A teacher is someone who either has a PhD in education or PhD in other discipline plus PGDE or PhD in other discipline with PDE, Professional Diploma in Education, or NCE. That is, if someone has a PhD in education, is qualified to be on that grade A level. Or he has a PhD, not in education, but with PGDE. Like some of you now, after your PGDE, I'm sure many of you will still proceed to master's level. And I'm very, very sure too that some of you will not stop at master's degree, but you will also move further to PhD level. But because of your PGDE, you are qualified to be on grade A level. Then we have grade B teachers. Grade B teachers are those with master's degree in education or masters in other discipline plus PGDE, PDE, or NCE. Who are the grade B teachers? Those with master's degree in education or master's degree in other discipline like MA or MSc plus PGDE, PDE, or NCE. Then we have the grade C teachers. Grade C teachers are those who have bachelor's degree in education or bachelor's degree in other discipline plus PGDE, PDE, or NCE. Then we have grade D. Grade D are those with Nigeria certificate in education. Nigeria certificate in education, NCE. So these are the categorization of teachers in Nigeria. So if someone want to get registered, he himself can assess where he belongs. And this will also help the agency, that is the TRCN, in giving the appropriate exam to that person. So now, after your program here in the University of Lagos, where do you think you belong? Where do you think you belong in all this categorization? So that is the first function, registering and licensing of qualified teachers. Another function is regulating the activities of teacher training institutions through accreditation, monitoring, and supervision. What did I say? Regulating the activities of teacher training institution through accreditation, monitoring, and supervision. That is the second function performed by the TRCN. Now, when we talk of accreditation or accreditation of teacher education program, it is an evaluation exercise undertaken by TRCN to ascertain whether or not the courses and programs of that institution meet the national minimum standard as required for the production and training of professional teachers in the country. That is what we mean by accreditation. But one will wonder that already we have one accreditation program for the universities, and that is the one that is conducted by NUC, National Universities Commission. Why additional accreditation? Well, I've just told you that there are other professions like medicine, like law, like engineering, that despite the accreditation exercise conducted in the institutions that those people have been trained, we also have a professional one, a specialized one that is done by another regulatory agency. Not until that is done before someone can be regarded as a professional. So in medicine, for example, apart from the NUC that we accredit the medical program in a university, the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria will also come for accreditation. There was a time in the University of Lagos when the NUC, our medical college did not have problem with NUC, but when it comes to the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria, they had a small problem. And that problem made that council to reduce the carrying capacity of our College of Medicine. So that shows that until when the institution or the faculty passes the 2 accreditation, they are still not good to go. So the accreditation exercise by the TRCN is not a child play. It is also a serious exercise, because if an institution passes that of the NUC and it fails that of the TRCN, they can't still admit. They can't still admit. So they make sure that the minimum requirements that is outlined by the regulatory agency is met. That is the essence of that accreditation. We have what we call the system-wide accreditation for teacher training program. And that is system-wide accreditation is a kind of accreditation that takes place every five years. And the main focus of that accreditation is to inspect all the programs of the Faculty of Education or the Institutes of Education, as the case may be. Then, after accreditation, I've just told you that accreditation is an interval within an interval of 5 years. We have another program that is on regular basis, and that is the monitoring and supervision. Monitoring and supervision are conducted on regular basis. And this exercise is designed to see the quality of instruction that takes place in the teachers training institution, the quality of their exams, whether they comply with the teaching practice regulations, and other academic programs that may be going on in these institutions. And when they come for this type of monitoring or supervision, they want to see how the lecturers or the teachers, how they dispense their instruction to students in the classroom. They want to see how they conduct their teaching practice. They want to see records. They want to also go to the field to observe some of these students as they do their teaching practice. Also, they want to see the projects of the students, the project they write. Like, at the end of this your program, and I'm sure many of you might have been giving supervisors, you write projects. So they want to see samples of these projects, and they want to ensure that it conforms to the best standards as stipulated by the regulatory agency. The objective of all this exercise is to ensure that the teachers that are produced in Nigeria are not below standard. Remember, the teachers are not being produced for Nigeria alone. As we know now that the world has compressed to a global village, you can meet yourself or find yourself in the different environment or nation. So they want to make sure that the teachers we produce here can also fit in anywhere in the world. Another reason for this exercise is also to raise the intellectual and professional quality, as well as the integrity and status of teachers in Nigeria. They want to make sure that quality is not compromised. And how would they ensure that? It is by engaging in the exercise, as we have mentioned. They also want to guarantee the adequate preparation of teachers as the pivot of national development. Remember, in the National Policy on Education, it has been mentioned there that no education system can rise above the level of its teacher. And no nation also can rise above the level of its education. So see that connection. If the teachers are not of good standard, it will affect the standard of education. If the standard of education is bad, it will affect the development in the country as a whole. Because all the professionals that work in the country, all the personnel that work in various offices are being trained in the education system. So if the education system is of low standard, it is sure that it will negatively affect the development in the country. That is why they make sure that the quality is high and is of a reputable standard. So we have mentioned two things, two functions performed by TRCN. The third one I want to mention is prosecuting all unqualified teachers teaching in Nigerian classrooms. Prosecuting all unqualified teachers teaching in Nigerian classrooms. Well, that may not be in full operation now, but I can assure you that with time, we shall get there. Today, if anybody who is not a lawyer should put wig and go to to court to defend a case, if that person is caught, he will be treated like a criminal. It is not a civil offense at all. It is a criminal offense. The same thing applies to teaching profession. Although, like I've said, that has not been implemented to letter, but it's just a matter of time. Many times, the registrar of TRCN has given out warnings, moratoriums to all those who are not qualified but teach in Nigerian classrooms that they should upgrade themselves or get prosecuted. The agency draws strength from the act that established the TRCN. For example, in section 17, bracket 2 of the act, I want to read it to you. That section says, if on or after the commencement of the act, any person not being a registered member of the profession practices as a registered member of the profession or in expectation of reward, or takes or uses any name, title, addition, or description implying that he is in practice as a registered member of the profession, he shall be guilty of an offense. And we know that if anyone is guilty of an offense, he'll be prosecuted. And when we say someone is an ex-convict, we know what that means. And that may happen if someone impersonates. You impersonate if you do not have license to practice and you practice. If you are not a teacher and you claim to be one, that is impersonation. And that is a gross offense which can send someone to prison. So enforcement of this act is on the hand of TRCN. Another thing they do is to conduct professional qualifying examinations and interview for new entrants. They also conduct entrance exam. We mentioned before that they register new teachers. That registration is not automatic. There are some requirements that are expected of the new entrants. The first one is the training, but the person has acquired the training now. The second thing is for him to pass a specified exam. So it means that even after your program here, by the time you graduate and you get your certificate, you can still not be registered as a teacher until you sit for that qualifying exam and pass it. So after seeing the result, you know whether you are qualified to practice or not. And the agency will authenticate that by giving you certificate to practice. And you can take the certificate anywhere. I know a number of people that wanted to travel some times ago, but when they discover that they will not be able to practice, they will not be able to teach where they are going because of not having that certificate to practice, they have to enroll and sit for that exam for them to be able to practice. So I think that has come to full force now. And it's just a matter of time before that will be extended to all levels of education. And those who will be in the classroom will be those who have been certified, qualified by that agency. I know now that government will not employ anyone into their primary or secondary schools without that certificate from TRCN. And it is gradually coming to the university too, because about 2 or 3 years ago, we received a memo from the agency that all of us should be ready to present our certificate or they get us out of the classroom. So it is the mandate of the TRCN to implement that. Another function is organization of internship for fresh education graduates. An internship is a period of work experience offered by an employer to give students exposure to the work environment, and it is always within the field of study. In our own case, the internship is the teaching practice. I don't know if you have gone for teaching practice, but if you have not, I'm very sure that you cannot graduate without going for teaching practice. The same way, a lawyer cannot be called to bar without going to law school. The same way, a medical doctor cannot be allowed to practice without going for housemanship. The same way, an engineering student cannot complete his program without, they call it IT. All these are basic requirements. And the essence of all these programs is to expose the learner or the student to the practical aspect of what he is learning. It is believed that it may not be possible for a student to acquire everything, to know everything right there in the classroom, because researchers have discovered that there is a wide gap between theory and practice. We cannot teach you everything in the classroom, but by the time you go out to practice, there are a lot of other things you will learn, and it will also afford you the opportunity to demonstrate what you have learned in the classroom. So that is the essence of that internship. So the agency ensure that the teachers under training pass through this program. We have so many other functions they perform. So you can consult the manual produced by TRCN. In that manual, you will see their functions there. Teaching as a profession. Now, let me ask you, is teaching a profession in Nigeria? Okay, for us to conclude whether teaching is a profession or not, there are two things we need to do. Two things. First of all, we need to understand what a profession is. That is the first thing. Secondly, we also need to understand the characteristic of a profession. But let's start from the definition. I will define a profession as a paid occupation that is practiced by someone after an advanced education or specialized training. What have I said? I said a profession is a paid occupation that is practiced by someone after an advanced education or specialized training. We can also look at profession from another angle. We can say a profession is a specialized form of job. A specialized form of job engaged in by someone after completing a required length of education or training. I can still go on to say professions are the arts of possessing unique and positive characteristics. Possessing unique and positive characteristics such as distinctive knowledge and expertise. Now, if you look through these various definitions that I've given you, some things are constant there. There are things that are constant in these definitions that I've given you. For example, we talk of paid occupation. So what we are saying is that if someone engages in an activity that nobody is ready to pay for, it is not a profession. Paid occupation. We also mentioned that occupation is practiced by someone after an advanced education. So advanced education is another thing we want to highlight in a profession. Advanced education. Yes. But are we not confused sometimes? When we talk of occupation, when we talk of trade, when we talk of vocation, when we talk of career, are they not professions too? So what we are saying here is that we may have a job, an occupation that is not a profession. If, especially, that advanced education is not there, it is not a profession. One may be earning his living from a particular occupation. He might have acquired some training there, but advanced education is missing there. that means that person is only practicing an occupation, is only earning a living, but he is not a professional. The same way someone may have a trade or a job that requires just a small training in a particular skill, like carpentry. Someone may learn the art of carpentry in a year, even 6 months. That person is only having a job or a trade, but he is not a professional. If that advanced education is not there, the person cannot be regarded as a professional. So an electrician, a mason, a carpenter, they are all regarded as someone who has a trade or a job, but they are not professionals. Someone may also acquire training in a particular field, particular area, like driving. You may acquire a skill in driving and become a driver. That does not qualify you to become a professional. Advanced education is key in every profession. So it means that a profession is not something one can just come by overnight. If someone is good and is skillful and is versatile, he can learn the skill of driving in a day or two. In fact, we even have some individuals that did not learn at all. They just watch other people, and from the way they display the skill, they acquire some of these skills and they find themselves on steering and they are driving. And with time, they became an expert in driving. But can someone talk of that in medicine? Can you just become a medical doctor by watching someone for some months and then you now claim to become a medical doctor? Or because you have been going to court on several occasions, you know the procedure, you know the rules, does that qualify you to become a lawyer? The answer is no. And the reason is because that advanced education is not there. So before we even mention the characteristic, the key ingredient in every profession is advanced training. It is important. Now, we cannot look at the characteristics of a profession, after which we are going to evaluate teaching. We are going to appraise teaching and see whether it is a profession. Like I've mentioned, the first one and the most important is specialized training. We have mentioned the role of training in the heart of professionalism. I've given you an example of those in medicine, those in law, and the same thing with teaching too. The same thing with teaching too, and that is why you are here. You want to acquire that training. So before someone can become a professional, that specialized training is very, very important. The second characteristic is institutional preparation. Institutional preparation. Institutional preparation. That is the second characteristics. Now, when we talk of institutional preparation, it means that the specialized training we are talking of must take place in an institution that is designated for the training of such profession. In teaching, we have mentioned those institutions. In medicine, they have their own. In engineering, they have their own. The same thing applies to law and other professions like that. People keep joining. So, such training is not just a type of training that can take place anywhere. It must take place in a recognized institution. Then, another thing, another characteristic is autonomy. Autonomy. Every profession must be autonomous. That is, they must be able to operate without interference from external party. And that is the essence of the regulatory body. For every profession, there must be a regulatory body. Although the regulatory body is there to control the operation of people within the profession, as well as the institution that prepare these professionals, they are absolutely independent. Although government policies may be made by non-professionals, like we have in Nigeria today, we have the National Assembly that makes law for the country. And sometimes you see that many of them are not professional in the areas they make law for. But that is a different thing entirely. Sometimes, before they can make law for some sector or a particular sector in the country, they will still need the input of the professional in that area. Let us look at education as a case study. The highest policy-making organ in education is the National Council on Education. The highest policy-making organ or body in the education system is the National Council on Education. This National Council on Education is headed by the Minister for Education. The Minister for Education is the head of this council. And you know, sometimes the minister may not be an educationist, as we have the case now. The present Minister for Education in Nigeria, Adamu, is not an educationist. He's a journalist. But he is there as the chairman of that council. Unfortunately, other members too may not also be professionals, because other members are political appointees too. They are commissioners for education in all the 36 states of the Federation. So these 36 commissioners, together with the minister, form the National Council on Education. I hope you are paying attention. I will ask you all this in exam, and you may not find them in any notes. So these people may not be professionals, yet they are the one making policy for education. But how do they go by it? They now depend on another organ, which we call advisory committee. And that committee is called Joint Consultative Committee on Education. Joint Consultative Committee on Education. They serve as advisor to the council. Who are the members of this committee? All the permanent secretaries in the 36 states of the Federation, permanent secretaries in the Ministry of Education in all the states. You know, these are professionals because the permanent secretary rose to that level as a result of promotion day in, day out, year in, year out. And he or she find himself or herself at that end of affair. These people are referred to as the professional head of the ministry, while the commissioner and the minister are the political head of the ministry. So it is this committee that give pieces of advice to the council on what to do. Although we still have other representatives from NUT and other trade unions, examination bodies like JAMB, like WAEC, like NECO, they are also represented. Committee of Vice Chancellors, ANCOPS, and the rest of them like that. They belong to the committee, Joint Consultative Committee on Education. So that shows that the profession is giving some kind of autonomy, because there are some things that can be done in a professional organization that government may not be able to overturn, because they are experts and they know better. So if any profession is not autonomous, that profession is only claiming to be, he is not there yet. Another characteristic, number 4, is ethical constraints. Ethical constraints. What do we mean? Every profession must have professional ethics, which we call code of conduct. It is not a blanket thing that I can do anything I like. In every profession, there must be ethics that members must follow. And sometimes, some people get into trouble, not because of laxity in their competency, but just because of violation of some rules. Just because they refuse to follow the ethics of that profession on some occasions. And that is to tell you how serious code of conduct or ethics is. So, this ethics guides the conduct of every member. It guides the conduct of every member of that profession. And anyone who goes against the ethics of that profession is committing an offense, which is punishable under the law or the acts that establish that profession. Then another thing is control of entry. Control of entry. Every profession must have laid down rules and regulations about how one can become professional in that area. What he needs to do, and what he also needs to do to get license, like we have discussed, under the registration of teachers in Nigeria. Then, another thing is that a profession is regulated by a body. A profession is regulated by a body. In teaching, that is the work of the TRCN. I've mentioned 6 characteristics to you. Now, we want to discuss. Looking at these 6 characteristics, can we now conclude that teaching is a profession in Nigeria? You see, education matter is on the concurrent list of the Constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria. When we talk of concurrent list, it means both the federal and the state government can legislate on education matter. So the regulation of the primary and secondary schools is under the control of state government, not the federal government. Each state government has requirements to be met before approval is given to anyone to run a school. I am not oblivious of those requirements. One thing I can tell you authoritatively in that requirement is that it is not compulsory for the owner to be an educationist. But what is compulsory is that an educationist must be part of the members of the board of governors. An educationist must be there. The owner may not know anything about education, but an educationist must be part of his board. Once an educationist is part of the board, then he's qualified to seek for approval. And the same thing applies even to the university level. Many proprietors of universities in Nigeria today do not have educational qualification. Obasanjo has a university. He is not an educationist. Atiku has a university. He is not an educationist. And so many others like that. So that is the procedure for registering a school. It doesn't mean that the owner must know about education. But where we are not getting it right is whether the board of governors even exists. You know, it's very easy to collect paper from your friend. My friend, please, I want to register a school. Give me your certificate. Government will take it. But whether you recognize the input of that person, whether you even hold meeting at all, is another thing entirely. And that is the practice, even all over the world. That is the practice. If I want to start a hospital today and I have my money, it's just a matter of getting someone who is a qualified medical practitioner. I use his certificate and enlist him as a member of my board. I will get approval. I will get approval. That's what you are saying. So they are different. They are 2 different things entirely.